Now,
It's just like
wouldn't that be insane if it did?
it would be insane. Yeah.
Now imagine if we understood one day that our consciousness was conscious itself.
That would be crazy. And I mean, it's possible, it's because I've heard there's theories of that we're all really one consciousness and we don't have, our mental capacity isn't enough to actually like see how we're connected to everybody else.
Yeah.
So I think it's possible. But okay, what about this then? So if that were true,
Welcome to Unattainable. Glad to have you with us and hope you'll continue to be a part of our family for the foreseeable future. And if so, please hit that subscribe button. You can watch and listen to our show on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, and all the other platforms. Today, we have a super special guest here, Zach Evans, the superhuman pianist with over 1 million subscribers and followers on social media. How are you doing?
good. Glad to be here, man.
Glad to have you here. How's life?
Pretty good. Can't complain. Beautiful LA weather.
You just got back from Hawaii.
Yeah.
How was that?
It was super fun.
Where did you guys get? Where were you staying? In the Big Island?
In Waikiki.
Is that the big island?
No, it's one of the other ones.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, it's a lot less lockdown than LA. Weather's still good, beaches,
I thought they do a 2 weeks quarantine there, but apparently not.
No, if you just got to get the tested right before your flight, and then you can just go in and you're good.
Got it.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. I mean, yeah, they've been pretty safe, so it explains why they're opened up, because they're just like very strict on who they're letting in.
Mm-hmm.
Did you do research before going there about like what island you were going to go to?
Yeah, pretty basic. Just literally Googled like best island, and then there's some site that was like, oh, this is the best one for relaxing. This is the best one for doing shit. This is the best one for whatever.
You went to the best one for doing shit.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, so what did you do?
We did a helicopter ride. I learned how to surf, and then a little snorkeling boat thing, which is way harder than I thought it was. Like snorkeling is like, I mean, it's not hard, but it's like when I first jumped in the water with the little tube and I can like barely breathe and my thing's on too tight, like freaked out for a second, but it ended up being super fun. Saw some turtles.
That's a fun one.
Yeah.
So I was doing some research on which island to go to. The only problem is like, even if you do end up going to one, it's going to be difficult to go to another one, because like some of them are just so far apart. Like the flights are like 5-6 hours to get to whatever you went to, and then if you wanted to like go to another one to do stuff in. So, yeah, that's I'm trying to remember which island I got the reservation for, which I still haven't got to go. So I got to do that. Is that your first time going there?
Yeah, first time to Hawaii.
How was it?
Yeah, it was great. Honestly, I feel like because we stayed in this hotel and had like this nice pool with infinity pool and everything, and we just were doing stuff the whole time. We never really got to just enjoy, like,
sit there.
Yeah, I kind of felt like we kind of like rushed it a little bit, which was fun. Like we definitely did some like fun shit, but at the same time, like there wasn't much like downtime to just go have a drink in the pool.
You were there for like 5 days.
Yeah.
It's a good amount of time for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Good amount of time. I think when I was there for about a week or so. Most of the time I was just at the hotel, kind of like hanging out. But it's nice. It's nice to go there for trips and just relax and sort of have fun.
Mm-hmm.
Well, welcome back.
Thank you.
Is it good to be back, or you feel like you want to jump out on like another adventure?
No, it's good to be back. Right. I'm the type, like personality type. If I spend too long on vacation, I get like antsy. I'm like, I need to get back to work. Like, I don't know. I need to like go press more toward like what I'm working for and stuff like that.
Okay, so that's actually a good opening to the segment of our conversation, which is talking about manifestation, right? You have a pretty good work ethic.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's do this because I don't want to describe like your work ethic and like your work process myself. So walk us through what a day looks like for you and how you plan that out.
Yeah, so nowadays, it's kind of wake up around 8 a.m., get some coffee, work till about noon, and then I'll work out, eat lunch, nap, and then after that, work on my social life, essentially. Which seems like, but not just, oh, let's go hang out with friends kind of thing, but more like really working on like networking and stuff like that.
Right.
So I'm really not working that long, per day and stuff. It's more so of the 4 hours I do work, like I hit it super hard and I'm like very consistent with it.
So that's so currently. So what are your goals currently?
Basically working on getting my business bigger and some music goals too. And then networking wise, I'm kind of hitting that aspect of it a lot harder than I was before.
Right. So prior to that, one of the ways that I guess you got to where you are is by your piano course business, right? So you have like this like massive following for that are basically people who want to learn how to play piano, right? And you teach them what's the most productive way to essentially learn a music instrument, right?
Yeah.
Which I think from like what I understand, you could also apply that to any other instrument and basically because it's more so about the work ethic and like how the way that you go about it rather than the fundamentals of learning piano, right? So, but you applied that to everything that you do in your life, which, so like the last time we hung out, you have like all this like visual, basically, boards in your room, looking at like your goals and all this stuff, right? Like focusing on everything that you need to do. And you and I have had a conversation where I guess it's better for you to say it in your own words. Like, what are your thoughts on manifestation?
I mean, I definitely believe that like law of attraction manifestation stuff works in the practical sense. I definitely believe, okay, if you're thinking,
does that mean?
Like if you're thinking about something a lot, that's going to keep you motivated and then you're going to be more consistent and you're going to work harder on it, which is going to help you achieve goals.
See, this is the exact reason why I didn't want you having these discussions with anybody else. Because now we're talking about things we agree on, which actually, see, now that makes a lot of sense, right? People, if you put yourself in, it's funny because earlier I had I had a guest on the show who was talking about manifestation, and I was like, oh, I have this, a friend of mine is coming over and we're going to talk about this subject. And she goes, oh, and I was like, yeah, he doesn't believe, I mean, he's very successful, but he doesn't believe in manifestation. And she goes, oh, I just sit there and I just tell the universe what I want. It just comes to me. Which that's what you find that absurd, basically.
Yeah. I mean, I get why people would believe it because I think it's enticing to believe, and I think when something does happen that is kind of seemingly lucky or out of nowhere, it seems like that's why it happened, so I don't think it's like ridiculous that people believe it. It just doesn't seem like it's like how could, what do you mean the universe, like what, like the energy of the universe just cares about your feelings and just throws stuff at you? Like, I just don't understand, like, what could possibly be like the mechanism that makes it work. You know what I mean?
You more so believe in coincidence.
Yeah, I believe in coincidence.
Like that's how you would explain the phenomenon.
Yeah, and like survivor's bias, which is basically like you remember the times it does work and you don't remember the 99 out of 100 times it didn't work. Like, okay, if you ask like all the people who have won the lottery, right, and you're like, oh, what was your strategy for winning the lottery? Like most of them probably have something where they're like, yeah, my lucky number is 17 and this is my birthday, so I knew this was going to help me, win the $1 million or whatever. And everybody that won the lottery probably has a different story of how to win the lottery and like the secret system they use to win the lottery. So then when we see those people, it seems like, oh, if we use their system, then like we could win the lottery too. But then you don't hear about the 99,000 people that had their own system and then it didn't work because they don't get on the news because they didn't win the lottery, Yeah.
Which makes, I mean, that makes sense. And more so in a sense that I think when what people sort of miss is the fact that there has to be some level of work that goes into doing whatever it is you're trying to manifest rather than just like saying something and then just do nothing about it.
Mm-hmm.
Because then at that point, you're dreaming.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's mostly where the confusion is. People thinking that dreaming is the same thing as manifesting.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, but I still, and I think too that most people err on the side of like thinking too much and not working enough, as opposed to the other way around of like working too hard and like, not visualizing enough.
So more so expect rather than work towards.
Yeah. And also like if you achieve something because you worked hard, like give yourself credit. Like that was you. You know what I mean? Like don't give the universe credit for that. Like that wasn't the universe. Like you did that shit. Like.
So, but that's the thing. Like you are very accomplished in that sense that you have a structure, and that structure has literally worked from day one. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Everything that you essentially set yourself to do, you have accomplished. And so if that formula is in your mind essentially man-made, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then nobody else has got to do anything with it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying like nobody can help you or something like that.
No, I understand that.
Yeah. So yeah, I just think it's all you, and like definitely like lucky things happen. And there's also the point of like, okay, if I try enough times, coincidences will be more likely to happen just statistically, where like somebody comes into your life that can really help you with something. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, I mean, in a sense, I suppose that could, you could only go so far by people helping you though.
Yeah.
Because I could feed you food for 10 years, but if you're not swallowing it, you'll lose weight and die. You know what I mean? And I could sit there and be like, well, I fed him, but you didn't eat anything.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So the reality of it is that you have to ultimately swallow if somebody's feeding you. That actually came out wrong. I suppose I should have used a different metaphor.
New pickup line for you, Mo.
I could feed you all I want, but you gotta swallow. That's funny. So do you so you think it's just a matter of chance and coincidence that certain things fall into place for certain people.
Yeah. Well, chance, but with the added thing of probability of like, if you put your name in the hat more times than somebody else, like you're gonna have a better chance of it happening to you. Like if you're an actor and you audition 1,000 times, like it is to some extent chance, but it's also like you have a better chance than somebody who auditioned one time and then quit, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I suppose you could look at everything in life and see it as a line of coincidences in every aspect, because then that would explain everything pretty much, you know? Because you know, I'm walking on the street and then I come across a $100 bill on the ground, and let's say I really needed it and I didn't have money for food, right? Is it really manifesting it? Or like if I thought to myself, okay, well, like I was manifesting, God, please, like give me something. Okay, I just need something today, right? Or is it just coincidence? I just came across it. And I think about that all the time, because it's like, okay, this I put it in this simple way, which is kind of like interesting, is like every time I walk up to the elevator to like go down, right? The elevator is on my floor. What are the chances of that happening? Well, 25% really, because there's 4 floors here. So it's a pretty high percentage. You know what I mean? So if you put things in that perspective, then what are the chances of everything that happens in your life happening? You kind of see a pattern that things do happen as a result of coincidence rather than anything else, right? But then there comes the argument that what if the coincidence, what if the percentage of the probability of something happening is so low that the combination of you manifesting it, quote unquote, has something to do with the fact that it did happen? Because let's say a probability of something is like 1%, and you believe that if you manifest this thing is going to happen, and at that point it becomes 100%, right? Because once it happens, then it's at 100%. So how do you argue that? How do you argue if a pattern of somebody achieving things that the probability of them happening was always very low, but because they have manifested it, they have a track record of 100% achievement on those low probabilities? Does that make sense?
Kind of, but I think it's a little bit of survivor's bias still, where like somebody has to win the lottery. You know what I mean? So then the person who does win the lottery, it's like, oh, you just took a 1 in a billion chance and it happened, so it happened 100% for you. But then what about all the other people that it didn't happen to? Or what about all the days you're like, God, I really need something right now. I'm having a tough time, and then you didn't find a $100 bill. You know what I mean? Like, there's the other side of the coin too.
Yeah. What I battle with personally is that I'm very logical, right? I understand math, and I understand probabilities, and I understand matter of coincidence. But I've also lived my life manifesting things that have had such low probabilities, in a sense that they're so out there that one wouldn't even be thinking about something like that happening. And yet somehow, when I do think about it, see, now that's where the argument comes in, is like, when you think about something, you put out a certain energy, and that energy gets captured by the world that you're a part of.
Okay.
And so, and if you believe in karma, which I don't know, do you believe in karma?
From the practical standpoint, I do.
So same argument.
Yeah, same
basically.
argument. I mean, yeah, if you're nice to people, they're going to want to be nice to you back. And then you develop a good reputation, and then people help you down the line, essentially.
But you see, you break it down to the same pieces. You just call it something else.
Maybe.
You know what I mean?
But like, do you think, like, when you say like you manifest something, right? Are you saying like your actions cause things to happen to manifest, or are you saying like something completely out of your control, like, you know, something just shows up?
Something completely out of my control, only within my imagination and thought.
So what's an example of that? Like the $100 bill thing you're saying?
No. That's like ridiculous. Okay, so I literally thought to myself, and I wasn't, me and my ex were not talking. Like, we were not on good terms. We were not having any sort of discussion or conversation. I thought to myself that so it was more so like, I want this to become a reality, which is like, I wanted to take a road trip across the country with her, and it happened. Like about 2 weeks later, it happened.
So you literally thought, I want to take a road trip, not just like, I want to see her again, I want her to call me.
That was my thought process. Like, I thought to myself, it would be great if this happens, and I just want us to like go on a road trip and just go.
So then how did it happen? Like, were you like, hey, we should go on a road trip?
No, she called me and she said she was having a hard time. And then this is like in the beginning when COVID had just happened. And then she couldn't, so she had a dog, and she wasn't able to get on a flight with her. And she was like, I don't know what to do, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I'll drive you home. She lived in North Carolina. She's from North Carolina. She wanted to go back to her family. And I drove her to North Carolina. But the point is that her response was like, that's crazy. Like, what are you talking about? Like, we haven't talked in like 6 months. Like, at the time she was just like, this is like, what the fuck, you know? Mm-hmm. But she was like, let me call my mom and I'll like call you back. And then she called me back. She was like, okay, when do you want? I was like, we could go tomorrow. Like, I don't, like, we're in the middle of a pandemic. I don't give a fuck. Like,
yeah.
No, I'm not working.
Yeah.
Let's just go. And she was like, this is crazy. I was like, yeah. It's not that crazy because I already knew it was going to happen.
Because you manifested it.
Yeah.
Okay, so.
And see, I would think that it's, I would think to myself, okay, that's a coincidence. Like, it could possibly be a coincidence, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, if chances of it happening is like fairly small, but if it was the only thing that had ever happened in my life, then yes, I would have said you're right. But it's not. Like, there are multiple different situations where I've merely thought about something and it happened.
So how does it work exactly? Okay, so like, let's say I'm like, okay, I want $1 million, right? So I'm like, wake up this morning, visualize $1 million, visualize just money raining down, $1 million, right? So then When do I get the $1 million?
Okay, so I don't believe in I don't believe in that type of manifestation. Like I don't believe in you're gonna think it and then it'll just come in like a gift wrap box with a bow tie on top. You know?
Mm-hmm.
That's not how I look at it. The way I look at it is you manifest something and the universe gives you a vehicle, a tool, a way, a door. And then from there you have to take on whether it's like an opportunity or whether it's like work that you need to put in, right? So let's say you want $1 million, right? Then the universe will give you a way to make that $1 million. Now you would have to like put some work into it and like make it happen, you know, but there's going to be an opening for you to make it happen. Whereas maybe before there was just like nothing. Right. And now you could argue that when you put your mindset into that, right, then subconsciously you start to see things that are different in that sense, that you start to like notice things that could allow you to basically get to that point, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, regardless of how you explain it, it's sort of it's in the same line of as manifesting things, you know. Yes, maybe there was an explanation for it of like how it happens or like why it happens the way it does, but you first have to believe in the concept and then afterwards understand the elements of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think there's a lot of truth in the fact. It's like what is the thing? If you buy a new car, then you keep seeing that car on the highway where you never noticed it before.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, it's kind of like that. Like, oh, if you're thinking about making a lot of money, for example, then you're going to see opportunities. Whereas before, oh, this guy that you met at a party, you might have just never texted him. And now you're like, oh, this guy owns this thing, which could help me in real estate or whatever you're trying to do. And then you like text him. You take action on it.
Yeah. I mean, one could argue that I subconsciously could have possibly seen reasons why, for example, my ex was going to have a hard time, and that would have led to X, Y, and Z. And so you could sort of, in hindsight, you could go back and explain everything. You see what I mean? Like that's easy to do. You get there's this thing with when you in like trading, stock trading is like, in hindsight you could everybody knows how the chart works. Mm-hmm. It's like you've seen what has happened already. Mm-hmm. But it's harder to know how it works, how it's going to pan out, and what the prediction is going to look like. So, but I think that first element comes with the belief system that there is a possibility for us to manifest things, and then believing that the things that we do manifest could happen, where then it will lead to those things actually happening and become reality. One could argue that you have manifested everything that you have wanted from day one, because it's essentially, manifesting is essentially the same as believing. You have to believe that what you're shooting for and what you're going for is going to happen, because otherwise, then you're just walking around without purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody's ever walked around without purpose who's become an accomplished, known individual.
Yeah, and I definitely think, most things that are worth having take a lot of work. Because if they're easy, it's just, you just get them and then you're like, oh, I already got this. Like, it's fine. So if it's something worth having, usually it takes a ton of work, ton of commitment. And yeah, if you don't have the belief like, oh, this is actually going to happen, then it's like you're not going to work through all the hard times to make it happen.
Yeah.
I think that's definitely true.
Yeah. And I mean, I've seen, you're visually very goal oriented. You have like all these boards up with your goals and what you're going to accomplish, where you're going to go and where you're going to be. I mean, that that you could call that like having goals, but you're ultimately manifesting the things that you want in your life.
So, okay. So let's say manifesting, like, do you believe in manifesting where you have zero control? Because like even in your example, it's like, your ex was like, hey, my dog can't get on the plane, but you still had to make the effort of like, oh, let me drive you, let's do a road trip. Like you still had like some control in like making that happen. But like, okay, do you think, for example, if you want the LA Rams to win their next football game, like, do you think you can manifest that where literally it's like, you don't know anybody on the Rams? Well, as far as I know, like you're not influencing the game. You're not even at the game.
I think that's ridiculous because no, I think anybody who comes out and says like, oh, like I manifested this thing happening. I was like, okay, well, like, 20,000 people could have been manifesting the opposite. Like,
oh, okay,
you know what I mean? Like that's just that's ridiculous.
Yeah,
I don't think that those things have any real possibility of them ever being, because even somebody says, oh, well, like this was karma, and karma for who? Like, you know what I mean? Like there are with the hundreds of thousands of people involved in a success or the lack thereof for something, and who's karma won whose karma? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it applies to those things at all.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. I think it has to be something realistic. Like, manifestation has to be something you're doing or in control of or have done.
Mm-hmm.
It's just I don't think ever is like I can't manifest that like an alien is gonna like fall off the sky. Like it's not gonna happen.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it just isn't. So, and anybody who's going to say, oh, boy, might, I guarantee you it will not.
As you see an alien just fall past your window. What the
So it's it's one of those things where you could sit there and manifest things and say that you're manifesting things, but if you're not doing anything about it, then 9 out of 10 times you're just not going to achieve anything. It's like, I gave you this example before, which was I had told my ex she was running late to go somewhere, and then she was debating whether she should take an Uber or drive. And she was like asking me like, should I drive, or because I can't wait for an Uber. If I wait for an Uber, I'm going to be running late. And like, what do I do? And I said, just like, why wouldn't you drive? And she was like, well, there's never a spot in front. All the parking spots are always taken. And so if I end up driving, then there isn't a parking spot. I'm going to spend like 10 minutes trying to find a parking spot. So I might as well Uber. And I was like, believe that there's going to be a parking spot in front, and I guarantee you there will be. And she goes, you're crazy. You don't know what you're talking about. I was like, well, I'm telling you, I'm going to manifest right now, and there's going to be a parking spot for you right there. And she goes, I swear to God, if there isn't. I was like, I'm telling you, there will be. I truly believe there's going to be a parking spot in front for her. She shows up, sends me a picture right in front of the place. There was one open parking spot. All the other parking spots were taken. I mean, I had no control over this. But also, you could argue, look, you could argue that it's coincidence. You can't.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There's no, there's no way for me to argue that it isn't coincidence because that is possibly coincidence. However, you could also say that, I mean, arguing coincidence is actually easier to prove than anything else, to be honest with you, because you could say, okay, she left at this specific time. It took her this specific amount of time to get there. And at this specific time, this other car left. And so therefore there was a parking spot open. All right. However, I didn't know any of that.
Yeah. So then how did it happen? Like what is the actual like physical? So you thought in your mind, you manifested it. Then like, do you like, you send the energy out into the world, or like, how does it work?
So that would be the idea, right? So the idea would be that, at least my idea of it would be that you have, okay, so it's like, people with good karma have accumulated tokens. Like I have like all these like tokens, right?
Okay.
And every now and again, I use my tokens.
You use them on a parking spot, Mo? Could be a millionaire, bro.
I use my tokens to get like one of those like rewards.
Okay.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I get the metaphor.
Analogy. Yeah. So now these tokens could be used for a parking spot, or they could be used for a trip across the country with my ex-girlfriend. It could be used for anything. But at this very moment, I'm manifesting $1 million by the end of the year. So we'll see. We'll see if my tokens are enough to get me there. But look, the reality of it is that I think the reality of it is we don't know. Okay, that is the one thing that I think everybody should get fully on the same page on with, is that we do not know what is true and what is not. We do not know for a fact if what we understand or what we believe in is actually truly what there is, right? I don't think as human beings we're knowledgeable enough to know how the world has been created, if there is God or there isn't, and how this world really works. We understand what we understand, but beyond that, it's just speculation and theory, Mm-hmm. And the reality of it is, if you have educated individuals disagreeing with one another over a subject, then who's really right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it's plausible, like, that there's something within the realms of science that we haven't discovered yet that does explain it. Like, maybe there is something where you think something and your brain waves are moving at a certain rate or frequency or whatever, and then that sends something out in the universe that actually has a cause and effect response.
Okay, thank you for that.
I think it's plausible, yeah.
So here's a question. Have you ever had a telepathy with someone?
Where it seems like I kind of know what they're thinking?
Yeah.
You mean, yeah, I mean,
they know what you're thinking?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do you think that comes about?
I think it's based on subtle changes in how our face is moving and then our brain perceiving that. So, for example, like you can tell sometimes when someone's lying just because how they are. And you don't know what it is, but subconsciously your brain has seen hundreds of people lie, and it kind of has a feeling of oh, it seems like this person is lying. It's a similar concept to that. It could be, I don't know how it works. It could be their nostrils flare,
sure.
Or their
but I'm not talking about
dilate.
reading people though.
Okay.
I'm talking about knowing what somebody's thinking, or knowing, because sometimes people are not here. People are not directly.
Oh, you're saying when you're not even in the same room as them?
Yeah. You could. There's if when somebody knows there's something wrong, when you feel something, when you're like, oh, my intuition says this, You know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, have you ever had any experiences in that regard?
I mean, I've had like someone text me right as I'm like about to text them, and I haven't texted them in like a month or something like that.
Okay, so I mean that's sort of similar, but how could you explain like something like that? I mean, you could explain anything by coincidence. You could say anything is coincidence, right? But I think for a coincidence to be more described as coincidence, they should happen more often than not. They should happen with more people than not. Do you understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Like, because if there are as many people in the world as there is, then the coincidences should happen more often than they actually do.
I mean, I don't know. It just depends on what the probability of that coincidence. It could be 1 in a billion. It could be 1 in 10 billion. You know.
Well, how many people do you know?
I don't know, like 50.
Okay.
Well, probably more than that.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know.
Definitely more than that.
Yeah.
But imagine like the probability of how many people they know and how many people those people know, right?
Mm-hmm.
How often do you hear people saying, "Oh, I was like thinking about you," and then you were like thinking about me, and then I like sent you a text?
Yeah, I mean, it
should happen more often. It should happen like every day.
Well, it probably does happen every day to somebody in the world, you know?
Yeah, I'm sure it does.
Yeah.
But for us to hear it, though, from like how many people were around and like,
you
know
I
what
see
I
what
mean?
you're saying.
Like we should be hearing this all the time, but we don't.
I mean, I think there's just a very low probability, like the probabilities at whatever rate it is for that, which causes us to hear it the amount of times that we've heard it. You know what I mean?
I mean, or there is actually a certain energy.
It could be.
You know,
it's possible.
Like, okay, so for example, chemistry, compatibility. Do you believe in that?
Yeah. I mean, like that you have chemistry with somebody or don't have.
Yeah, there's some people that you're, you know, more physically compatible with and have chemistry with, and there are some people that you just have no compatibility and chemistry with, right? Mm-hmm. If you didn't believe in that, then you would have to believe in the fact that you could just work through anything and like make anything work, right? Mm-hmm. Which is just not true. You have to, there's like a certain compatibility and chemistry you have to have with someone in order for a relationship to work. Mm-hmm. And so if you believe in compatibility and chemistry, then that would mean that the way that a person is built is similar to the way that you have been built, right? There's a certain energy that matches between you two, right? When we talk about, for example, like electricity, we don't see it, but it exists, right? Our knowledge has become advanced enough to be able to explain it, but the molecules are a part of the existence of that object, right? Mm-hmm. Same thing applies to human beings. And so that energy that we have within us is going to affect others around us. You know how like people say, I don't want somebody in like with like a bad energy around me, right? Mm-hmm. You could automatically bring people around you down by just being down. You know, I could come up and be like very sad and just like, oh man, today was like horrible, terrible. It's just world sucks, man. Like this is just so shitty. Like fuck this. You know, I talked to you like this for 30 minutes. You're going to leave here pretty fucking down, bro.
Yeah.
You know?
So then, because I agree with that, but I think it's more on just the sound of your voice than like an energy, just because okay, if I listen to a podcast and they're having fun on the podcast, like I feel like my energy changes based on just me hearing the audio. Even if wherever they are in the world, they're not feeling that emotion anymore. They could be asleep. And I would still feel the energy that they felt when they were recording it. You know what I mean?
Have you never like looked over at someone and they were like looking at you?
Yeah. No, I've done that.
How do you explain that?
I mean, if it's like a close friend, right? It's kind of like, oh, let's say we're at a party and like someone's being weird. It's like since we come from the same background and we know kind of how the other person thinks, it's like, oh, this dude's being weird, and we kind of look at each other like.
That's not what I'm talking about.
Oh, what do you mean then?
I'm talking about like you're just sitting somewhere, and
you feel like someone's looking.
You feel like somebody's looking at you, like from like you're behind or like back of you, like to the side.
That is a weird phenomenon.
It's not that weird. It's just the energy.
Maybe it is.
It's like. Have you seen Star Wars?
Yeah.
Okay. I've never seen Star Wars, but
okay.
I could reference it because I know it's something that happens.
Use it in the metaphor,
right? I've never seen it. It's like the laser beam, you know, that's focused on you, and it directs the energy towards you, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there has to be something to be directed towards you for it to work. Like if there is no, I could look at you all day long, but if I'm dead, you're not going to turn around looking at me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's definitely plausible that there's, because right, like our thoughts are literally electricity. Like it's like our neurons sending electrical signals. So it is possible from that standpoint, like somehow that we haven't discovered yet or figured out yet, that you know, the electricity actually causes the air around us to vibrate in a certain way, or like some beams of electricity keep going even afterwards. So I think that's definitely plausible.
So it wouldn't be that crazy of an idea to think that those same thoughts could be projected into the world, where then they catch something that creates a sort of a dominoes effect, if you may.
Yeah, I would just have a hard time with that because, okay, let's say the parking lot example, right?
Uh-huh.
So let's say you're manifesting it, like whatever electricity is going through the air or whatever the energy is, like how would it consciously, because for this to work, the energy would have to also have like thoughts and be like,
you have to be conscious.
Yeah, it'd be like, oh, I want to help Mo. Like, let me go like find this person.
Absolutely. 100%.
But how could the energy, because it's like electricity doesn't have consciousness.
Now,
it's just like
wouldn't that be insane if it did?
It would be insane. Yeah.
Now imagine if we understood one day that our consciousness was conscious itself.
That would be crazy. And I mean, it's possible, you know, it's because I've heard there's theories of that we're all really one consciousness and we don't have, our mental capacity isn't enough to actually like see how we're connected to everybody else.
Yeah. So
I think it's possible. But okay, what about this then? So if that were true, they should be able to test like in an actual lab of like, okay, Mo, stand over there, face the wall, have somebody behind you, they're either looking at you or not looking at you. And you should be able to, higher than 50% of the time, guess if somebody's looking at you.
Okay, so correct.
Which I'm assuming they've probably done something like that.
But here is where that also comes in, is a matter of chemistry and connection and compatibility, right? Because, okay, this is where it gets all like really freaky.
Okay.
If you are not compatible with someone and do not have chemistry, you will never be able to read their mind. You will never be able to. You could sit next to someone for 10 years. You would not know what they're thinking because you're not compatible and you have no chemistry. But if you are very compatible with someone and have a lot of chemistry with them, you could sit next to them for one day and they'll be able to tell you what you think. Right?
Yeah, I think that's
so.
True.
In that sense, and the same thing goes with the so okay. if we're talking about electricity, right? A certain power of electricity will make you feel a certain way. A certain frequency of audio allows you to hear. Any lower, any higher, you will not be able to hear. Mm-hmm. Same thing with the energy. That frequency has to match your frequency. Otherwise, you're not going to feel anything. And otherwise, you're not going to be able to tell that it even exists.
That's a theory. That's definitely, yeah, I guess it would be hard to disprove that, because it could just be they don't have the same chemistry.
Yeah, just those frequencies don't match.
Okay, what do you think about this then? If the law of attraction, you really could influence things to a movable degree, how come big companies don't just hire why doesn't Google hire 500 people to just sit there in law of attraction all day for good things that happen to Google? You know what I mean? Why don't governments hire all these people to law of attraction us to win a war or to our economy to do better or something like that?
Okay, so if you believe that our consciousness is conscious, you also would have to believe that it would allow you to manipulate it. However, if it's conscious, would it allow you to manipulate it?
Okay, so you're saying if it's a conscious being, it would say, oh, I'm not going to help Google make more money. They make enough money. Even if they hire all these people to manifest it, I'm just going to not do it.
I mean, possibly.
Yeah.
It gets to very tricky waters at a certain point where you're just speculating, right? I mean, first of all, Google or any government would never really do any of that because most people don't believe in any of this, because of the fact that if you can't on a regular basis see result, then it wouldn't really make sense for it to exist. It's not tangible like the dollar is, or this bear, or whatever. You sort of have to, in order to convince people of things that exist, you have to be able to show them that they're effectively changing their lives on a regular basis. And I don't think it's tangible enough for people to understand it. And so therefore we assume it's not. We assume it doesn't exist. And also keep in mind, even to extent of believing in yourself. Okay, this is a very simple concept of the fact that if you want to be successful in life, you have to believe in yourself. Look, you wouldn't walk around and tell people I suck at everything I do. Because then if that were true, you wouldn't be as accomplished as you are today. Unless I'm wrong and you have been walking around telling people you suck at everything that you do.
Yeah, no.
Yeah. I mean, you believed in what you were trying to accomplish. Mm-hmm. And you believe that this is what I'm good at. This is what I know how to do. Right? But that belief system itself was a driving force, was it not?
Yeah. I'd say so.
It's impossible to function in society without believing in yourself. Mm-hmm. That's the number one thing. I know people who are so good in being a musician or being an artist or, whatever it is. But they don't believe in themselves.
Mm-hmm.
You could be the most talented person on the planet and go nowhere in life because you just don't believe it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think the belief is what leads to the action, which leads to the results, you know what I mean? And especially the consistency, because even if you don't believe in yourself, you could get hyped up for a couple days, go balls to the wall, and then just it doesn't work, so you kind of give up.
Yeah.
If you don't have like the actual belief.
Exactly. And that's the craziest part of it is like, it is the work that you do is not the hardest part. The hardest part is to control your mind. The hardest part is to get through the mindset of how failing is only a path forward and not a path backwards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree that with you that the mindset is the most important, but I also think that you develop the mindset through the action as much as the other way around. So I don't think it's just like, oh, let me work on my mindset until I have this good, and now I can like do the work. It's kind of like mindset has to be there a little bit, and then as you do the work, then you start seeing success. And then you're like, oh shit, like this reinforces my belief that this is possible. And you do even more work, because there's some times where, you wake up, you feel like crap, and you're like, oh, I don't really feel like working today. But if you get started and you get through that first 30, 45 minutes, all of a sudden you hit that kind of like zone where you're, into it.
Yeah, but how did you get started?
By just like forcing yourself to do the work, like do the hard work of
mindset.
Of it. Yeah, I guess, yeah, that's true.
The hardest part of that day was half of your mind controlling the other half and telling it, I can do this.
That's true, yeah.
That was the hardest part of that day.
Mm-hmm.
The rest of it just came.
Mm-hmm.
Because your mind got you through thinking you can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
And people miss that fact that in order to succeed in life, we have to develop the strongest asset that we have, and that's our brain.
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of it too is setting yourself in an environment that is conducive to having good thoughts. Which
Absolutely.
is why my room looks like a serial killer's room right now with all my goals written up all over the place. I read this interesting book. Have you read Willpower?
Mm-mm.
So basically they've done a lot of studies that show like our willpower is a limited resource that we have throughout the day, and that literally like depletes as we do things, so that by the end of the day you're kind of like out of willpower. And then when you sleep, it kind of like resets. So like they did a study, for example, they had two groups and they had a test or like a puzzle or something that they had to complete. And the test was impossible. Like you can't complete it. It's impossible to win. But they were studying how long would the person keep trying at the test before they gave up and just said, screw this, I'm out of here. And one group they put in a room that was just like a normal waiting room before the test. And the other group they put in a room that it had like literally like cookies on the table. And they said, you can't eat the cookies. Those are off limits. Those are for other people. And they kept them in the room for like, 30 minutes before the test with these cookies that looked really good. And you had to use all this willpower to not take the cookie and eat it, obviously.
Right.
And that group gave up significantly sooner than the group that didn't have the cookies in the room and that had basically 100% willpower, where the other group was maybe at like 50% willpower. So I think it's super important to, at least from my end, to like keep my environment in a way that's going to make me want to work, as opposed to forcing myself to work. because you can force yourself to work, but it's going to use up a lot of your willpower that you might want later in the day. But if you're always keeping your mind like excited about working, you use a lot less willpower to get yourself into that state. And I think that's a lot of what the law of attraction is essentially you're keeping yourself in a positive state of wanting to achieve your goals. So you use less willpower, and then you can work longer hours, which leads to you being more successful, essentially. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. So don't put cookies around.
Don't put cookies around is mainly what I'm trying to say.
Well, one of the things that that I was reading was that if you cut up your time to pieces that are much easier to achieve and then give yourself rest time as reward in between, you go through a lot more productivity than if you decided to push through one set without any rest time and reward.
Mm-hmm.
So like the example of it would be like work for 1 hour and then rest for 10 minutes and reward yourself, and then work for another 1 hour and continue that process, where then at the end you have worked 7 hours and then rested for 50 minutes. Whereas if you worked through 4 hours and then gave yourself a break, that first 4 hours would be productive, but then the next 4 hours after that would not be as productive as the first one. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I use a similar system. I use a graduated system of work, which is basically similar concept. But so whenever I wake up, the first block is always an hour and a half, just because I figure out through trial and error that's kind of like my focus ability when I first wake up.
Yeah.
And then I'll take 10 to 15 minute break, and then my next block is only 45 minutes, so it like cuts down significantly.
Right.
And then the block after that will be 35 minutes, and then it keeps going down from there until I'm literally doing like 20-minute blocks, just because your brain gets kind of tired out.
Right.
But then I always use a count up timer, which seems like kind of like a trivial detail, but I found it's way better because sometimes you hit that zone where you can just work 4 hours straight.
Yeah.
And you just forget about time, and just for whatever reason that day you were just on. And if you use a countdown timer and then it beeps and it breaks you out of that, it's like, yeah, you could rest, but sometimes you don't need it. You know, sometimes you can just power through. Yeah. So
especially if you like what you're doing.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of interesting stuff, but I think that ultimately what it comes down to is really how our minds are wired, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But I often wonder to myself if people who don't believe in believing are just wired that way, or could they shift their mindset and allow themselves to see the world differently, which would benefit them immensely throughout their life.
Yeah. I think people can change beliefs, but I think it's almost impossible to change someone's beliefs by explaining something to them or by telling them or lecturing them or something like that. I think they have to figure it out themselves somehow. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I hate the fact that you know when they say you have to hit rock bottom in order to do something for yourself. Mm-hmm. I just hate that saying. Mm-hmm. I don't want it to be true. I don't want it to be. how things work, because man, that just sucks.
I know. I agree.
You know? But unfortunately, in some cases, that's the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way it is. You have to allow someone to hit rock bottom and then decide they want to pick themselves back up. Crazy.
Yeah.
Have you ever hit rock bottom?
A little bit. Probably not as rock bottom as like other people go through, but I definitely had a time in college where I was just pretty down. Which actually led to my whole piano business, ironically. So
that was your rock bottom, essentially.
Yeah.
So and that's what it is. Like, how far is rock bottom for people?
Mm-hmm.
You know, how far do you have to go in order to see things differently, or like realize or decide you want to get back up?
Yeah, and I think it's different for everybody. Like, some people it's, oh, I'm literally homeless on the streets because I can't pay my bills, and like I got super into drugs, blah blah blah. And some people it's just like, oh, like I'm lonely, and like I have everything I need, but I'm just lonely, and that could be their rock bottom, you know?
Yeah, for sure, 100%. This has been very productive.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Yeah,
it's been fun.
It's been interesting conversations. Appreciate you being open-minded.
Yeah, for sure. No, I love talking about this stuff. It's always interesting.
It's fun. It's fun. We'll have you come by next time with well, we'll see. We'll see. Maybe we'll just have you come and we'll talk about, because I want to talk to you about like more of your system and how you do things for yourself, because I find it very useful for people to sort of see that success comes with a formula that we all could implement, and it'll work. Like, it works. And I think a lot of people miss the fact that things can be put in a certain perspective that will guarantee you success. You know, it's not by chance. Like, it isn't. Like, it just is not by chance. Like, people become successful because they follow a very specific structure and formula that has been proven to work for every single person who has used them before.
And yeah, a lot of you hear like overnight success stories, and then you actually look into it and it's like, oh no, they've been working the last like 8 years, you know, and then they finally just hit. But yeah,
the saying is nothing is ever overnight. It just seems that it was overnight because it finally happened at a certain moment. But it's never overnight. There's no such a thing as overnight. Like, there's no scenario that somebody got up and then was like, oh, because that would be overnight, right? You got up and then you're like, oh, I want to be this, and then the next day you became that thing that you decided to become. You know, it doesn't work like that.
Yeah,
there's always a 10-year, 5-year, 20-year period before that existed.
And even the people that do like win the lottery, like, there's a weirdly disproportionate amount of them that end up going bankrupt in like 2 years.
Right.
And it's because they never actually developed the habits of, like, you know, being successful. They just kind of got lucky one day, and then, you know, it's gonna.
Well, yeah. If money never meant anything to you, it doesn't matter how much you're given. You're never going to see value in it, and so you will lose it as fast as you got it. And unfortunately, that is also one argument that I guess people have when it comes to politics, but that's a whole other subject.
Next time.
Yeah, next time. Thank you, man. I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thanks. It was fun.
Thank you for watching and listening. Please like, subscribe, and share. And as always, be kind to yourself, be kind to others, and we'll see you on the next episode of Unattainable.